Hello chess friends! Today I'd like to show you the slightly tricky procedure of how to mate the lone king when you play with a knight and a bishop. Actually, this ending is so complex and so tricky that even accomplished masters up to the level of grandmaster have been found wanting and sometimes not been able to convert this decisive advantage in a tournament game. So this endgame deserves close study, and I will break it down into several parts so that we really learn how to go about it step by step. The first insight when you study this endgame is you can only mate the king in a color, you can only mate the king in the corner that has the same color as the bishop. In other words, right now the king is standing in the wrong corner, in the safe corner, and we would have to drive it all the way from this corner into this corner over here to the square A8. Now let me show you how you go about it. I've already set it up in a pretty advantageous way for white, so all he has to do right now is to give a check on F7 with a knight. And seeing that the H7 square is covered by our bishop, there's only one move. We have to go to G8 with the king. And now comes already a very important little nuance. When we play this ending, we have to sort of understand which jobs, which roles do the parts of our little army play. And we can perhaps say that the king and the knight, they work together to restrict the opponent's king as far as it's possible, whereas the bishop from time to time has to sort of pass a move, lose a move, temporize, as we also say in chess lingo. So basically what we move now, as long as it's a bishop move along this wide diagonal, but please not on the square H7, that draws immediately. So any square on that diagonal is good. Let's say we go here. It doesn't really matter because the next move is forced. But now again, we have to be careful and we have to show a minimum of presence of mind and also of precision. We move our bishop up here. The idea clearly being that now the square G8 has been taken away from the king. Not only can he never go back to that square because the knight controls it, now the bishop helps and takes away this vital square. You may want to remember that constellation. You might say the white pieces are set up as if they were forming an L. Yeah? The king is in opposition to the other king, the knight is on the square between the two kings, and the bishop stands on the same rank as the knight, just separated by one square. Okay, now let's see how it continues. Black has only one move, he goes here. And now again, we need to know what we are doing here. Black would like to escape via this square and then hopefully break through all the way to the other safe corner, but we mustn't allow this. We now play the knight back to the center, this way, controlling the escape square D7. Now from here on we should analyze two variations. One variation I can call, or we could call, the stubborn defense. Black tries to stay as long as possible in the vicinity of that safe corner, which means he would go back here. That's what we are going to analyze first. But we should also have a look at this defense when the king just tries to run away, and then again it's important to know how to stop that escape plan. Okay, let's start with the easy variation. Black goes here. As you can see, again, the two kings are standing in so-called opposition. And all white has to do now is to give another check. That's why we rerouted the knight to the central square e5. Again, black can only make this move. And of course, now having taken away this square from the king, we will follow and protect our knight, knowing that the king has now been driven out of the safe corner, can't go back here, has to go to d8. Okay. As so often before, it's a good idea to take opposition, because when the two kings are in opposition to each other, this always means the active king covers the maximum squares and takes away the maximum squares of his opponent. As we said, black tries to be as stubborn as possible, does not yield to white's ideas quickly and easily, but on that square all we need to do is say a little check, which means the king has to withdraw to that black square. There's no way that he will ever get back to that safe corner, so he has to go here. And now we can actually make a little satisfying little move that you may remember from a couple of minutes ago. I will now just put my bishop here. And guess what? This constellation, this L-shaped attacking formation, is exactly the same that we had in this corner when the king was on f6. All we did was we shifted the whole position by 3 ranks from the F file to the D file, or let's say we shifted it by 2 files, because between the F king and the D king there's just 2 squares difference. Anyway, this is now the second time that we had this ultra positive position for white, and we can count on our being able to drive the king all the way to that dangerous corner. See how it's done? Black has to go here, and as we remember from a couple of minutes ago, he wants to run away here, so we block that square. We don't allow him to go there. He is stubborn, goes here, and now we just very coolly, in a very relaxed way, we leave the king here. We don't run around with the king. We don't want him to ever escape via e7. This bishop is fantastic. All we do is we give another check, which means the king has to go to the dangerous corner again. I will protect my knight, seeing that the king can't escape. This is controlled, so he has to go here. I will take opposition again, because I can see, aha, if he tries to run away here, I just give the other check. Yeah, you see how harmoniously my pieces work together. This knight takes away the black square, the king protects the knight, also takes away that square, and the bishop takes away this and also this square. King has to go here. And in this position, we can now announce this is a mate in 1, 2, I think mate in 3, if I'm not wrong. Let's see. So first thing we do, we play the knight here. Then black has to go to the corner. We can move, basically we can move our bishop anywhere along this diagonal. It doesn't matter really. Let's say we go here. Black has just one move. And now I think it's easy to see. Check. King goes here. and finally checkmate. All this, the whole thing, driving the king out of this safe corner into the dangerous corner where we can finally checkmate him, worked like clockwork because we followed a clear strategy. We defined the roles between what the knight, the king, the bishop had to do, and we may want to remember that L-shaped formation, which always guarantees us maximum effect. We will be able to drive the king sideways into the dangerous corner from the defending king's perspective. Now let's do it all over again, because now I want to show you what happens if the king is not so stubborn, which might also be called cooperative from another point of view, because that's very easy. When the king is stubborn, doesn't easily go into the dangerous corner, then actually he's pretty cooperative, because that makes it very easy for us to bring him to the dangerous corner. Now let's see if there is a better, a more, an approach that yields a couple of chances for him perhaps to escape. Let's see. Let's go back to where we were. So we start as before, check. King goes here, any square will do. King goes here, bishop goes here. And we have the L formation. That's what we know, that's good for us. King goes here, we bring the knight back. But contrary to a couple of minutes ago when the king went here and everything worked smoothly like a clockwork really, now the king decides to try and run away. And you really have to familiarize yourselves with this way of play, because if you don't master to prevent the king, the opponent's king, from running away and running away from the dangerous zone, you might be at risk of drawing this endgame, because please remember, there is the so-called 50-move rule when you play official chess, which means if there is no pawn capture or capture of any sort, or no pawn move for 50 moves, then the game is declared a draw. And of course, no pawn moves are to be expected in this endgame, and no captures are to be expected. Only those captures which are negative for myself, because if the king captures either my knight or my bishop, it's draw anyway immediately. So, in other words, you have to know your strategy, your approach quite well, and this is perhaps the cleverer approach, to try and run away as quickly as possible. Anyway, what can white do? Of course, he will follow as best he can. And now really black tries to get out of that tangle and wants to use the black squares to hopefully land in this other safe corner. And now comes an important move. White has to know that. Well, actually there are two moves in a row that you have to know, and from then on it's basically also clockwork, but you have to know what comes now. The first thing you do, you put the knight on d7 again. Why? Because immediately these two black squares are taken away from the black king, and that's very important. We spoke about cooperation. The knight is very strong because that's exactly what he can do. He can control the black squares. The colleague over there, the bishop, can only control the white squares. He was born a white-colored bishop, so he can only ever control white squares on the chessboard. If he had been a black squared bishop, a dark squared bishop, then of course he would be able to control the dark squares on the board. But given the fact that it's a white squared bishop, we have to play in such a way that the bishop controls white squares and the knight takes away the important black squares from the enemy king. Okay, let's say black goes here. hoping that maybe it's not the black squares that he can use, but maybe he can sneak out via b5. And now comes the next precise move. Bishop here, bishop to d3. Now look, this square is taken, this square is taken, this and this through the king, this as well through the knight, and also this through the bishop. So in other words, we have a nice little barrier for the king. It looks a little bit shaky, but in fact it's super solid, waterproof as it were. And once you know this setup, the king will not be able to run away to that corner. Let's conclude. Let's say he goes back to this square. Then another cool laid back bishop move will force him all the way back to the edge. I suggest you play here, because that takes away this square, this and this is already taken by the knight. So in actual fact, all he can do is go back to the edge of the board. And now it doesn't really matter whether he goes here or here. Both variations are pretty similar. Let's say he goes here, arguing, maybe white plays a mistake and then I can run back to that corner. But actually, white is not going to make a mistake. He will play the king opposite into taking up the opposition. Now, black can try to run away here, but of course, what we're going to do is check. No f8 because of the super strong knight. Black goes here and L formation. And from this position, which we had 5 minutes ago or 7 minutes ago, I hope you remember how to drive the king all the way into the corner. Let me quickly show you again, and then I hope that when you set up your pieces in such a way that the enemy king is in the safe corner, you will be able, by driving the guy out of that corner all the way into the opposite corner, where you can finally checkmate it. So from here, it would be, say, king c8, knight to c5, again controlling this vital square. He goes here, we say a check, no other chance than going here. King follows, king goes here, no other choice. King takes opposition, king tries to run away, gets a check, has to go to b8, and if you like, what you can do now is you can place the bishop again on d7, which means this is now the third time that we have this constellation. We started out here, bishop here, knight here, then we had bishop here, knight here, and now we have bishop here, knight there. Yes, you see, this is the third time that we reach this L-shaped formation, and that is the sign mate is imminent, mate is quickly to follow. So he goes here, I play my knight to c5, black can only make this move, but that's what white has been waiting for. The knight now gives this very strong check, the king can only go here, and again checkmate. Now this was the relatively easy part of that endgame. Now you know, or you should know, you ought to know how to drive away the king from its safe corner into the opposite corner where it can be checkmated. But of course, in a real game, you might have to first drive the king away to the edge of the board or into a corner. And how to go about this, I'm going to show you in the next video. Thank you very much, and please practice, because you know practice makes perfect.